Hey guys, this is Master Control. Right now I'm just going to show you my deck tech on Zurgo Helmsmasher. First I'll let you know why I chose Zurgo. These colors, before this newest set, were only available with Kalia. I like Kalia, she was a lot of fun, but I found that usually Kali decks, the deck relied a lot on her. Not only that, but to make Kali's ability profitable, you needed to put some higher cost demons and angels in your deck. And if you got them early in the game, they were just sort of clunky. I really like Zurgo because he gets out fast, he puts on pressure, although he's only 2 toughness. It makes your opponents use cards and play defensively, which is nice. My deck style, I'm probably a control player by heart, so my deck style is it's a lot of hand hate, a lot of denial. I try to use early turn discard and land destruction, not heavy land destruction, just strip mine, wasteland, crucible, to deny them resources and make Helmsmasher basically soften it up for the Helmsmasher. Alright, so some deck tech. The lands first, pretty straightforward package. I have Cavern of Souls in this deck. That just makes them uncounterable. Can't really argue with that. I have all the fetch lands. I have Mishra's Workshop in this deck. I have a lot of artifacts, so it really shines. Mana Confluence, Command Tower, City of Brass, all the usual suspects. Ajanu Castle is sort of nice. Prevent the next 2 damage that would be dealt to creature this turn. As you can see, Zurgo is only 2, so you can take 3 damage. It basically saves you from a lightning bolt. Alright, 0 cost artifacts. I have Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt. Don't need to go much into that, just to get him out fast. This deck rather has 36 lands in it, which, if you can see the curve right now, is fairly. I think it's fairly balanced. Mox Diamond, it never hurts to have in play, just because of all the 2-drops I have here. Usually I'm 2-dropping into a Signet or some other form of ramp. The 1-drops are Enlightened Tutor to get some of the artifacts on board here. If I got it early game, I'd probably go for Mana Crypt. Late game, maybe Coercive Portal or a Sword if I need protection for the Helmsmasher. Steel Shaper's Gift, sort of the same deal. I'd go for probably a Sword, depending on the situation. It's a tutor, so. I do use Path Exile. I don't necessarily like Path Exile in general, but just because it gives your opponent something. But in this deck, I find it very useful just because it's so low curve, and I want to remove blockers as quickly as possible. I don't mind using it in this deck. I have Tithe here, Duress, Imperial Seal, Thoughtseize, along with Hymn to Tuark and Mind Twist are my discard package. They do a lot of the work, and like a Duress or Imperial Seal, they almost act as a counterspell, 2 counterspells. Like if you Duress right before you're going to cast Zurgo, they have 2 choices. They can either counter your Duress, or you can take counter out of their hand. If they have more than 1 counter, probably don't cast Zurgo. Vampiric Tutor, Gamble, Imperial Seal, just standard tutors. I use 1 Pyroblast in my deck. I say 1 because there's Red Elemental Blast, which does the same thing. This is one of those cards that really shines in a competitive game. It also not usually, but it only works against blue cards as a counterspell or as destruction. So this deck is the worst matchup, I guess, is Hardcore Control. So Pyroblast, I'm never not happy to draw it. In a game where I'm not playing blue, it's 1 useless card in a deck of 99. It's definitely worth the trade-off. Vandal Blast, pretty straightforward. It's just super efficient artifact destruction, late game and early game. Mana Vault, Skull Clamp, and Soul Ring. The Skull Clamp is exceptionally good in this deck because I run a lot of guys that make 1/1s. Elspeth, Nahiri, Bitter Blossom. I'll go into those in a second. So Stoneforge Mystic, once again, fairly standard. Just gets me my artifacts. Bitter Blossom. I like Bitter Blossom for 2 reasons in this deck. Because Skull Clamp. I guess 3 reasons. it's not inconsiderable damage later in the game, and it also provides protection for Zurgo when I'm facing decks that force me to sack my creatures. I run Dark Confidant. I do have some higher casting things in this deck, but because this deck is so fast, I'm never really worried about the damage it does, and the trade-off is well worth it. Dreadbore, kill Planeswalker, Boros Charm, the ability to give Zurgo Double Strike makes it a 2-turn kill. Boros Signet, Mindstone, Orzhov Signet, Rakdos Signet, pretty straightforward. Lightning Greaves, I'm not too sure about in this deck. It does give Zurgo protection, but if you're going to kill Zurgo, he already has haste, so one of the abilities are sort of useless. I like the Shroud, but this deck, although Zurgo puts a lot of pressure on, it doesn't necessarily rely on Zurgo. It relies on weakening their defenses for Zurgo to finish the game. Jitte is one of the best artifacts in the game. One of the best equipments. Winter Orb is pretty nice here, just because I have so much artifacts that produce mana. Denying them their land early in the game is super effective. Oblivion Ring, Council's Judgment, just straightforward exile. Dismember, 1 mana, 4 life to kill something 5/5. Liliana, she's exceptionally good in any deck that runs black. I find her sacrificing creature ability comes into play a lot. Quite often I can get her out on the second turn. And usually when I get her out on the second turn, unless they have like a mana elf, I'll plus her just so I can double sack to clear the way for Zurgo. Phyrexian Arena and Coercive Portal, those are my draw cards. They just provide fuel for longer games. Vindicate, once again, just removal. Wear and Tear, removal for artifacts and enchantments. Chaos Warp, removal for anything. Then I have a bunch of ramp here. Chromatic Lantern, Coalition Relic. I use Crucible for Strip Mine and Wasteland. Yeah, sort of Feast and Famine, Fire and Ice. They're always useful. I have Tanglewire in my build. Tanglewire is a card that I just love. When you play it on their turn, they have to tap 4. If on your turn, you have to tap 2, because you can stack it in a way where the Fate counter comes off first, and then you can actually tap Tanglewire for Tanglewire's cost. So you only have to tap 2 other things, and you can see how many artifacts I have in my deck. So it's not too strenuous. Quite often, it just gets you to take an extra turn. It's fantastic. I have 1 Cataclysm, so that destroys everything except for 1 creature, 1 land, and 1 artifact on each, or an enchantment on each board. So I'd obviously keep Zurgo around. Day of Judgment, Wrath of God, and Damnation. Well, those are 3 board wipes, but with Zurgo on the battlefield, that symmetrical effect becomes not so symmetrical, and you can just once again clear the way for Zurgo. I use Elspeth, Sun's Champion, who puts 3 1/1s on the battlefield, and Elspeth, Knight Errant, who can give a creature 3/3 and flying. So it's nice for Zurgo to have some evasion there. Sorry, I should also mention I do have Shizu, Death Storehouse in here to give Zurgo fear. That's another form of evasion. Okay, Utter End, a lot like Vindicate, except for it exiles and it costs 1 more. Johnny Vengeant, you can usually get him out on 3rd turn and start tapping down lands. I've blown up my opponent's lands quite often with Johnny in this deck. It's amazing how fast I can get. Smokestack, another stacks effect, which synergizes well with Elspeth, Glitter Blossom, you name it. Batterskull, I've added just recently. I wanted to test it out with Stoneforge Mystic, so you can just get a 4/4, and when you put it on Zurgo, it becomes a 2-hit kill. Sun Titan, it recurs half of my deck. Karn, just all-around removal. We've already talked about Mind Twist. So all in all, this deck, I wouldn't say it's tier 1, or the general rather, I wouldn't say it's tier 1, but I feel that this list represents a fairly competitive build for the general. It's been nothing but a pleasure to play, and